Hello, everybody. Good morning. 11 o'clock Eastern here on a Friday, on a Good Friday. So happy Good Friday for those of you who do that kind of thing. It's still Friday, which is awesome. I hope everybody has an amazing weekend coming up. Hello, Libby. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hey, who's excited to talk about data products today? By the way, I have a new mic. I'm excited about that. It's a Shure mic. It's what all the podcasters use these days. So hopefully my voice is coming through better than it used to. Not that my old mic was bad. Here it is. It's a Blue Yeti. Yeah, I'm dropping the mic, Mo. I like that. But hopefully my voice is a little bit better. This platform we use for video recording tends to compress video and audio. So I'm not even quite sure if the expensive Shure is doing what I would want it to do, but we'll see. Hey, where's everybody joining from today? Drop a note to let me know. I've been getting a lot of Canadians recently, which is awesome, especially since I am Canadian. Getting a lot of folks from the UK as well, which is like really is endearing to me because it's like, what is it now? Oh, it's not quite happy hour in the UK. Be getting closer in Central European time. So if you're joining from Europe, if you're joining from Central Europe, say hi. Joining from anywhere, say hi. By the way, this is an interactive office hour type session. So if you've got questions about anything, folks, if you got questions about data products, we're going to talk about that today. You got questions about anything, data fabric, data governance, data strategy, anything that starts with data. I'm happy to talk about it. My name is Malcolm. I'm the head of data strategy with Profisee software. I talk about all things data. I'm active out on LinkedIn. I've got a podcast called the CDO Matters podcast. If you haven't checked it out, please check out the CDO Matters podcast. We have engaging guests. We publish every 2 weeks without fail, thanks to the amazing support of my team, Libby, and others in the background that are helping me make all of this work. So we publish the podcast every 2 weeks. We do this live podcast at once a month, typically the last Friday of every month. Sometimes my travel schedule gets in the way there and we got to shake things up. But publishing a lot of content on LinkedIn, publishing a lot of blogs. I publish to Forbes on a regular basis, Dataversity, Data Management University, Blue Street Data. I've got content all over the place. My job is to help you as a data leader or data practitioner or data manager or data steward succeed. That's what I am here to do. Of course, I work for a software company, Profisee. We make MDM software, but our goal here is to have me be your advisor. And if you do get to the point of actually needing MDM, some point in the future, master data management, well, then maybe you'll consider us. We would love to be your MDM provider. All right, enough selling. Enough promoting. Well, maybe not. Promoting. Upcoming May, April, May, and even into June, I'm hitting the road, folks, which I do a lot. But I've got a very, very, very busy spring. If you are a data professional in Atlanta, Boston, New York, Chicago, Denver, Dallas, can't forget Texas. I lived in Texas for 20 years. If you're a data professional in any one of those cities that I just mentioned, we are coming live to you. So Profisee, in conjunction with its amazing partners from Microsoft and Nudesic, are putting on a roadshow at a Microsoft Technology Center near you. So if you have not had a chance to go to a Microsoft Technology Center, I highly recommend that you check it out. We'll put, maybe if we can get Libby to put a link into the chat about how to register. I don't know if we actually have that posted yet. So maybe I'm putting you in an uncomfortable position, Libby, about posting where I would register those things. Either way, check out my LinkedIn feed. We will be posting how to register for these events. They're half-day events. They're in-person events at Microsoft Technology Centers. These technology centers are amazing. They're great places to go where you can hang out with me, folks and architects from Microsoft. We're going to be talking about data products. We're going to be talking certainly about the Microsoft Fabric. We're going to be talking about AI. We're going to be talking about all things data in an amazing half day where you get to hang out in an MTC. You get to hang out with your peers, fellow practitioners, fellow data people. You can get to meet me in person for whatever value that would be. I can talk your ear off about data. But anyway, it would be an afternoon well spent. We did a bunch of these last year. They were extremely well received, and I would welcome you to get a day out of your office or get a day out of your home office and come spend a day with data professionals, data practitioners, thought leaders like me, to learn about what's going on with OpenAI, what's going on with the Fabric, what's going on with data products, what's going on with MDM and data strategy and data governance. So excited to bring these events to you, particularly if you're in one of those cities, maybe you're close, with more cities potentially to come. As well, this spring, I will be at the Data Universe event in New York City, first week of April. I'm looking forward to that, reconnecting with some of my old data buddies. I will also be at the CDO IQ conference in July. That's really not spring. I'll be at Dataversity's Data Governance and Information Quality event in San Diego in early June. That's a great event, by the way. If you're a practitioner, if you're looking to get CDMP, Certified Data Management Professional, Certified Data Management Professional, Certified. Did you say that twice? If you're looking to be a certified data management professional, Dataversity offers great courses to do that, and they offer the exams at their Dataversity events, and there's one coming up in early June in amazing San Diego. So yeah, that's it for promotions. Where's everybody joining from? Has everybody already said that? No, we got a quiet group today. Or is it just me? I don't know. I'm going to try to reload that page on LinkedIn and see what happens. See if I can actually see things on LinkedIn. Nope, still can't. Sigh. So if you are joining through LinkedIn directly and you're saying hi to me and I'm not responding back, well, it's because I'm trapped in this bubble with this recording platform that we've got. So anywho, oh, look, wait a minute. Everybody's saying hi now. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Libby, for dropping things in. Oh, yeah, those are registration links that we've dropped into Goalcast. That would be awesome if you could join and you're in one of the cities. Thank you so much, Libby. That's awesome. Amsterdam, that's fantastic. Golden, Colorado. Jack got a big dump of snow a couple of weeks ago. I hope hope you took advantage of that while it was there. One of my closest coworkers lives very near you in Boulder and was enjoying the snow. Amsterdam, love Amsterdam. Such a great city. Des Moines. Hey, Greg, glad you could make it. I have not actually been to Des Moines. I need to. San Antonio. Jade, so glad you could make it. I lived in Austin for 20 years, just north of you in San Antonio. Used to love to get down to the riverfront in San Antonio. I would actually drive down to San Antonio just for dinner because there's so many great restaurants down there. It's awesome. It's a great vibe. Really love San Antonio. Moa from the ATL, thank you. Another Libby from the ATL, Atlanta. Not to be confused with the ATX, Austin, which is where I used to live. Frankly, I think the greatest city in the United States, Austin. I just love it. Austin is so fantastic. Yes, I live in Florida now because I live at the beach. There's no beach in Austin. It's about one of the only things it doesn't have going for it. Brian Heller. Hey, buddy. Good to see you. Joining from DC area, Northern Virginia. Brian and I worked together for years and years at this little internet startup called America Online, where Brian, I, and a handful of other people were laying the plastic tubes into the ground for the internet way back there. So good to see you, Brian. Hope you've been well. Derek from New Haven. Nick from Duluth, Minnesota. Man, you're up there. Nick, I'm Canadian. So, yeah, I mean, you're awfully close. You certainly know what winter feels like being up in Duluth. Glad you can make it today. Thank you. Jennifer from Louisville. Used to get to Louisville all the time. Such a great, vibrant city. Louisville and actually in Austin have a fair amount in common, I would say. There's kind of a young and just hip vibe. Louisville's actually got that. I quite enjoy Louisville. Oh, hey, Mary Lee from ATX. Mary Lee, I used to live in a place called Cedar Park. but I was still in Travis County, unincorporated. Well, it was Cedar Park, but I lived close to Lake Travis up there by the Oasis, fairly close to there. Iqbal, glad you could make it. Tommy, hey. Melanie from Bethlehem. I used to get to Bethlehem all the time. I stayed at the Sands Casino and Resort in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So random, I know. Bethlehem. Yeah, awesome. Glad you could make it. Thanks, Melanie. Marilee, in Southwest. Okay. All right. Well, you're down there like 20 to 22, maybe-ish down there. Very hilly, very beautiful. Glad you could all make it. Lori, thank you for making it. I guess you guys didn't tune in today to hear me talk about where I've been. So let's get to the chase. Let's talk about data products. Boy, oh boy, is there a lot of swirl around data products. I think it's also, it's a good thing. The swirl is a good thing. I think that it's awesome that there's a lot of hype around this, because I think that there is a lot of value that we can be delivering to our customers by taking more of a product-centric approach. I'm going to share with you a few insights today. I may even share a slide. I tried to knock out a slide in about 5 minutes before going live. It was probably a bad idea because I'm not good at slideware, even when I spend a lot of time thinking about it. When it comes to like visual things and design things, I'm just horrible. But I should probably share the slide. I'm still working on my coffee this morning. Maybe arguably I've had too much. I'll probably share my slide because I think it could be useful to kind of lay out what I'm calling a spectrum of data products. And I really see there being kind of 3 types of data products. One thing to keep in mind here is that there is no wrong answer. I do have a favorite. I do have a recommendation. If you were to ask me, what would I recommend you do vis-a-vis data products? I certainly have a recommendation to give, but I do want to say there's no wrong answer here. A lot of companies are doing data products, but they're all doing them in different ways. So I'll share this spectrum, but let's kind of back up. Ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get to data products being something that 50% of CDOs are either evaluated or are saying that they already have? And that data came from Gartner's latest CDO survey. So we're like at 50% penetration, which is amazing. I would argue in about 2 to 3 years since the hype around data products began. Where did the hype come from? Well, I think it's pretty simple. It came from the data mesh. The data mesh exploded on the scene about 2 years ago, and a lot of companies got really excited about it. I think the timing of the data mesh was perfect, although largely because it came out and it came on the scene largely as COVID was right at the peak. And a lot of companies were looking for answers, right? They were looking for ways to decentralize. They were looking for ways to put more analytics into the hands of people that needed them. Things started going crazy during the pandemic, and what we saw was a lot of companies needed to change their operating models very, very quickly, right? A lot of the heavy-handed top-down approaches to managing data weren't working very well during COVID, because what we learned is that we needed flexibility. We needed adaptability. We needed to change how we manage our supply chains quickly. We needed to change how we manage our relationships with customers quickly. We needed to pivot, right? And that required a lot of organizations to say, okay, are the people who need the analytics getting them as fast as we need to get them to them? There's always been a little bit of, a negative perception of any sort of centralized architectures, I would argue, over the years. We've been going back and forth, centralized, decentralized, centralized, decentralized. Mesh springs on the scene, says, hey, I've got an answer. Hey, let's decentralize everything. Let's give analytics to the people. And by the way, a core operating tenant, a core pillar, as it were, of the data mesh is data products. Fast forward a year, maybe a year and a half, and I would argue the mesh has really kind of fallen from the limelight. Not because it's a bad idea. I think there's a lot of things to like about a data mesh, but because it's actually in its purest form, if you embrace all of the aspects of a data mesh, not just data products, but things like federated computational governance, things like data contracts, things like complete and total decentralization from an architecture perspective. The data mesh says data warehouses are an anti-pattern. The data mesh says an MDM is an anti-pattern. So you throw all these things together, not to mention that totally decentralized governance is really, really, really hard. Totally decentralized data architectures are really hard. How do you do peer-to-peer governance and peer-to-peer sharing, right? You put all these things together. What companies learned very quickly was, man, this mesh thing is hard, like hard, right? And what companies started to do is realize, you know what? I can't just throw out my data warehouse, right? I can't just completely give and turn over governance to every single individual operating domain. Because if marketing says we have 15 customers and finance says we have 12, well, who's the winner? I still need to give that single answer of how many customers we have to our CFO when she asks, right? So it's not just about decentralization. There is also some sort of need for centralization here. It's doing both. So the idea of mesh as the kind of the one answer to rule them all, I think, and throw in the fact that it's really complex to do and really hard to do. I would argue that 95% of companies don't have the data and analytics maturity needed to execute a mesh. What you're left with, if you kind of push away all the things that are the hardest to do in a mesh, what you're left with are things that are actually probably operationalizable. You can do it. You can implement data products. So I would argue what was kind of left out of the craze of the data mesh is data products. And you had a lot of companies say, well, this makes sense, right? Like taking more of a domain-centric approach makes sense. Understanding what the domains need makes real sense. Building reusable, governed, discoverable, managed, curated data assets that I can distribute as a product through a data marketplace, maybe even. Hey, that makes sense. I can do that. I can go hire somebody and put the label of a data product manager on them. I could do that. I could even repurpose some existing analysts that I've got in my organization. These things are all doable. That other stuff for the mesh, federated computational governance and complete decentralization and data contracts, all that stuff, hard. Data products, easy, relatively. It's really not, but we'll talk about that some more. So I would argue what we've got here is a bit of a kind of a leftover from the craze in the mesh. If you disagree, I'd love to hear your perspectives. But I think that's kind of where a lot of the craze around data products comes from. So let's get into it. Let me see if I can share my screen without blowing everything up. What does that button do? Choose what you want to share. Oh, well, hold on. Okay. I'm going to try not to share my entire desktop. No, not that button. That button. Window. There we go. Okay. Let's see if this works. Drum roll. Haven't shared in a while on this platform. Okay. So, and disclaimer. I'm horrible at PowerPoint, and I did this literally in 5 minutes before the beginning of the event. Please don't judge. Let's see if we can put that. I'll make that a little bigger if I can. All right. I see data products kind of in a spectrum from left to right. And we can even use the words shifting left versus shifting right. The data mesh says that we should all shift left and move closer to business applications, closer to the sources of data. I would argue that there's a viable approach is also shifting right. And it's not an either or. You should probably be shifting left and right, which sounds really hard to do at the same time. But I see data products on a spectrum. Over on the left-hand side of the screen is what I would argue is kind of data products in its, what's the way to say this? Where the data product is something built generally for the benefit of the data and analytics team. The data product is built specifically to enable better governance and more reuse. Where the goal here is basically to create a raw material that can be used downstream, somewhere over on the right of this diagram, to be consumed in maybe a dashboard, to be consumed in an API, to be consumed in some other system, but where what you're producing over on the left-hand side is in essence a raw material, is not what I would call a finished product. So this is an approach that is advocated by a previous guest on my podcast, a gentleman named Peten Strenghold, who wrote a book called Data Management at Scale, which I definitely recommend, by the way. It's a great book. It is a very dense read. There's a lot of information there. But B10 would say, hey, data products are something that we need to build in order to create scalability within the organization, in order for us to promote reuse, in order for us to better govern our data. And these data products are things that then can be consumed downstream in subsequent processes. So I'm a product manager. I used to be a chief product officer. I led a product function. I've hired product managers, developed product managers. I've had a P&L multiple times when it comes to building products. This description of a product, to me, sounds more like a raw material. It doesn't seem like a finished product. It seems like a raw material where what you're creating is a component, right? Like something that would end up actually going into a data product. So the definitions on these ends of the scale tends to be, if you ask somebody who adheres more to the left-hand side of this screen, what's a data product? Well, they would use this kind of really generic language around, well, it's a container, it's designed for reuse, it's discoverable, it's curated, it's governed. They would tend to describe the product through the attributes of the product and not what the product does and not what the value the product provides. Hopefully that makes sense, but that does kind of align to what I would consider more of a raw material. I would argue that this is really just core data management. And sorry, if you adhere to this side, and this is the way that you prefer to look at data products, I would argue, and this is going to be a little provocative, but I would argue there's nothing new here. There isn't. I would just argue there really isn't anything new here over in the left-hand side of the screen, right? We've been doing this. We've always been doing this. As data and analytics people, we've always struggled to figure out how to better govern data, drive scalability, drive reuse, right? People on this end of the scale who think that this is what data products should be and how you should manage data products. There's many of them that actually even think that you should be taking data straight out of source systems and doing very, very little to it to the degree that you should, but that getting closer to the source systems is the kind of the purest thing that we can do as data and analytics managers, right? And again, there's no wrong answer here, but it is really kind of more of a raw materials approach. As we move over to the right a little bit, we start to get into things that like what I think a mesh would call a data product, right? And there are actually, again, where the product is really kind of being described through its attributes, meaning it's discoverable, it's governed, it's curated, it's scalable. It's again, you describe the product on based on its attributes, which is a very data way of doing things, right? I would argue at the core, we are kind of librarians and we like to label things and classify things. And we would describe a product based on its attributes, right? It has this color, it has this wheel, it has this dial, and that's how we describe a product, right? And that's not wrong per se. It's a very bottom up manufacturing centric view of the world, right? And I put these things together with these attributes, and that means it's a product. So that's really kind of, I would argue, is the world of the data mesh. Now, the data mesh mesh acolytes would say, well, wait a minute, Malcolm, this is actually about customers. This is about the domains. But I would argue the customers here are analytics teams within the domains, not end consumers of the data products. And the difference there, it may sound subtle, but I think it's fundamental, where the audience for a product in a data mesh really is an analytics team, not an end consumer. And if you disagree, I would love to hear your perspective on that. Drop me a line in the comments if you disagree. Again, not wrong, but tends to be more about scalability, tends to be more about reuse, tends to be more about a governance approach and a governance model. Yes, it does. In this, as we move to the right, I would argue we get a little closer and a little closer to the customer, which is the end user, by the way, which is not an analytics team, which is somebody consuming a report or data out of an API or even interacting with AI. So that's a good thing. But this kind of data mesh products kind of fall into here. Again, you keep moving a little bit more to the right, get into conversations about data as a product versus data products. Oh boy. Like, okay. I don't really think that there's much of a compelling difference there. People like to say that there is something, it's not a data product versus data as a product. Some people say that calling something data as a product and not a data product is the distinction between, okay, data product is the world of the mesh, and data as a product is when we start to inject product management disciplines to it. Perhaps, right? I think that's probably true. Where we move over to the right and we start to look at things through the lens more of product management than data management. And if I would have had more time, I probably should have taken more time to draw this. I think I would have put a line right in the middle. Over in the left skews towards kind of data management, and over in the right skews more towards product management. Maybe another way to look at things. As we keep going over to the right, I think there is a place for what is called data product management. When I hear people talk about data product management, they tend to think, a lot of people tend to think that data is a snowflake, and that the way that you would manage data as a product is different than any other product, like any other product that would be managed under a product management function. I disagree with that, but that's just my opinion, right? I don't happen to think that data as a product is any different than the shirt I'm wearing, or an iPhone, or an insulated mug. From the perspective of product management, they're just products. But there are people who believe that data is a snowflake and it's different and it can be replicated a zillion times over. The marginal cost of creating one new unit of sale is zero. That means it's unique, and the way that you calculate value is unique, and on and on. I don't agree with that, but there's valid perspectives there, and that's fine. Let's move all the way over to the right-hand side of the screen. And this is where I think the greatest value for data and analytics teams rests, which is the application of product management. The application of product management as a discipline into data and analytics, where you overlay classic product management, right? And this is a skill that is not widely embraced within data and analytics teams today, but it is a unique skill. Product management is a unique skill. But I think over on the right-hand side here is the greatest benefit to organizations. Now, could you combine these models? I think you could. I think you could take conceivably a data product from the way over in the left-hand side of the screen, use that as a raw material to create a dashboard, to create a product over in the right-hand side. I think you could probably do that. That's fine. So it's not necessarily an either or here, but I think the greatest value to organizations will be over in the right-hand side of this diagram, where they start overlaying product management. And in this world, how a data product would be defined for those who kind of look at the world through this lens is very different than how it would be defined over in the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, people tend to define data products via their attributes, and they give them these kind of loosely, like it's a container, right? It is a conceptual framework or a container to hold the idea of something that does these things. That's the left-hand side. Over in the right-hand side, to me, a data product, the definition of a data product necessarily must include two things. It must include the idea of a customer and customer needs, and it must include the idea of value and value generation and value delivery. So the way that I define a data product, and I fall over in the right-hand side of the screen here, folks. This is where I think we need to be, is over on the right-hand side of the screen. How I define a data product is something created by a data and analytics team, built for a customer to solve a specific problem that customer would otherwise be willing to pay for. It's something that a data and analytics team builds that is solving a certain customer need that customer would otherwise be willing to pay for. That's it. And it touches all the things that I think that really, really matter here. You're solving a customer need, you're building something, and you're delivering value. In the process, you're delivering value. And if you are not talking about value delivery, and if you're not talking about the customer, I would argue what you're building is not a product. That's just how I view things, and that's kind of how I tend to look at the world. I think you're generally building something more that looks like a raw material or a component, but not necessarily a product. I think I'm a product person. I'm an ex-product leader. And if you're talking about building products, I would say that you have to be focused on a customer and solving their needs and keeping them happy and meeting their needs. And you have to be talking about value delivery. That last bit there, value delivery, is where we really get hung up. We really, really get hung up. When I share my definition, people start to ask questions like, well, what does, Malcolm, does that mean everything needs a price tag? Yes. Yes. Now, does that mean that I'm going to force my customers to pay, right? If I run a data function and I open a data marketplace, maybe I do it in a data catalog where I expose some products in a catalog. Does that mean I'm going to put a price on every one? In a perfect world, I would argue the answer to that is yes. Can most data organizations do that? No, we're a long way from that. And it's probably not conceivable in the short term. However, writ large, I think that we can be implementing cost models within organizations where the utilization of data products and the benefit of data products is tracked. And that where at the end of the year, you delivered X dollars of value as a data leader through your data products. That would result in probably some sort of budget allocation in the next year. There are companies that are doing this, that are managing their budgets from a data and analytics perspective. There are CDOs that manage their budgets this way. Not many, literally handfuls here, but I think that is conceivable. As a North Star, right, is something to aspire to. I think this is absolutely where CDOs should be focused, which is trying to get to a place, even if we never get there, trying to get to a place where you could put a price tag on every dashboard, every API, every product that you build to understand, is this something that our customers are getting value from? Excuse me. That's my body telling me I need to take a break from talking. Nothing that more coffee won't help. So yes, I think that having a price on things is something, it is a North Star. And it's not about charging. That's not what this is about. What this is about is delivering value. And what this is about is building products that our customers want and that our customers get tangible value from, that they would be willing to pay for. At the core, folks, this is about knowing and proving we deliver value. Right now, this is a huge problem for CDOs. This is a huge problem for data and analytics teams writ large, right? Where we talk about being data-driven. We say that all the time. We say, hey, we need an organizational culture that uses data to drive decisions, that widely embraces data, that is fact-driven, that is data-driven. This is what we want. This is what we aspire to as data leaders. However, when it comes to managing our own business, we can't put any numbers on the value of what we sell. Sell, offer, give, develop, build for. You get my point. So I think there's a real opportunity here in that, yeah, we should use this as a North Star. It's all about value delivery. And I think it'd be great to get to a point where we had the ability to understand how much value we were driving. A good starting point would simply be to do cost management. So value, you can think of it as a coin, right? There's two sides of the coin. There's the cost and there's the benefit. That math is actually ROI, right? But if we can't understand what the benefit is, we at the very least can understand what the cost is of building something. That'd be a great place to start. You could take a cost-based pricing model. There's a lot of different ways to do pricing. Cost plus, it's a valid way to price. If it costs you $1, you want to make a 20% margin, well then final price to the customer is $1.20. Anyway, I don't want to berate the point too much here when it comes to value and tracking value, but I think that it is something we desperately need to figure out. Over on the right-hand side, what does that data team look like? I think that data team, that data and analytics team starts to look a little different, and the titles start to look a little different, starting with most certainly a product manager. If you are serious about data products, building data products, being more product-centric, I'm going to talk about that next. What does that actually mean? From the discipline of product management, what does that involve? If you want to be more product-centric and take this approach, you got to hire a product manager. And these are unique skills. Can you develop an analyst or somebody else currently in a data function to become a product manager? You can. You can, but I would say there's probably more value in hiring somebody who knows product management, particularly if your organization is new to that discipline. You need somebody who kind of knows what they're doing, I would argue, to help kind of usher you into that way of operating, that operating model, that product-centric operating model. So that's one person you'd certainly want to have. Another person that you would certainly want to have is somebody I would call loosely a value engineer. You know, if you're trying to get to the point of tracking the value you deliver or the cost of what you deliver, we as data teams need to do a better job of this. And I think we should be thinking about in the future of having somebody dedicated on our team who basically does, let's just call it loosely, pricing, right? Pricing is a unique competency. Again, this is a unique competency. There are people that do this for a living, who develop pricing models and manage pricing models. In the product world, these people are incredibly valuable. Pricing is a hard thing to get right. So again, it's a unique skill. So that's a couple of folks that I think would be great additions to data and analytics teams that probably aren't on those teams today. So why don't I take a breath? Anybody got any questions so far about my ugly slide? Maybe it needs work. What happens when I go full screen? Well, then I can't see myself. Oh, okay. It's not like I need to see myself, but yeah. Any questions? I'll stop ranting at any minute. Any questions? Anyway, product management. Why is product management unique? What is a product-centric approach? Well, again, the answer to that question of what's a product-centric approach, and I hear people say product thinking a lot. It's a phrase. Product thinking is, I would argue, kind of popularized by the Mesh, because that phrase appears in the book Data Mesh many times. It's something that Zhamak, who wrote the book Data Mesh, really strongly advocates, this idea of product thinking. But again, for a lot of people, what that really means is on the left-hand side of the screen. It means, you know, being close to a domain and allowing a domain to define its own governance rules and allowing a domain to define its requirements, as it were, for products, right? Particularly analytics. Oh yeah, and by the way, over in the left-hand side of the screen, you're generally only talking about analytical use cases. You're not actually talking about operational use cases, like products that could be data products that would be consumed in an operational system, including AI, by the way. So product thinking for a lot of people means, oh, I need to be leaning to the left-hand side of this. And product thinking is about reuse, and it's about discoverability. It's about a data catalog. It's about, you know, governance. It's about domain centricity. That's what product thinking means. Well, I would argue no, because when you use the word product, when you use the word product, to me, if you're using the word product, you got to be talking about value and you got to be talking about customers. And if you're not talking about those things, then you're probably you're not building a product, at least how I define it. Again, no wrong answers here. But product thinking to folks on the left-hand side of the screen means something very different to folks on the right-hand side of the screen. On the right-hand side of the screen, where I live and breathe, product thinking is things like user-centric design thinking, right? And what does that actually mean, right? Like solving problems, understanding what customers need, understanding how customers use or consume our data, understanding workflows, understanding business processes, standing over people's shoulders and watching them interact with screens, watching them where those products are easy to use or easy to understand, where they're well designed. Think of my goodness, think of this. This is like the ultimate in design. When the iPhone came out, there weren't any instruction manuals for it. There was no literacy program associated to the iPhone. It was intuitive. It was easy to use. It was well designed. Now, I get it, right? Do we need to be talking about user-centric design when it comes to dashboards? Well, yeah, actually, I would. It should be intuitive. It should meet your needs. It should align to your business processes. It should use your definitions. It should be so easy to use and so intuitive that you'd want to pay for it, and that you don't need to go to any sort of prolonged literacy training in order to figure it out. That's a well-designed product. That's over on the right-hand side of the screen. And that type of thing, that work, design-centric thinking, product-centric thinking, value centric thinking is very different than reuse, governance, domain centricity. So not all product thinking is created equally. I would argue the product thinking we need more of is to put the customer at the center of everything we do, not the data. Again, I would argue over on the left-hand side of the screen, we put the data at the center of what we do. On the right-hand side of the screen, we put the customer at the center of what we do. Fundamental differences here. Again, no wrong answer. And I do think that these things could actually coexist. You could take a perspective over on the left-hand side of the screen and adopt it over on the right-hand side of the screen, or use them together in a hybrid way. Oh, Haley, it's not a beautiful slide. I have somebody telling me it's a beautiful slide. She gets paid to tell me that, though. It's not. It's a really ugly slide, but that's okay. I literally did it in 5 minutes. This is kind of an adaptation of something that I shared a few months ago at Data Day, Texas, which was an awesome conference in Austin, where I gave a presentation titled Data Product Chaos, where I kind of shared some of these thoughts for the first time. So yeah, I probably should have spent a little more time sharpening the slide. So I'll stop sharing. Now you can get to look at me in my, see, look at the video. Is my camera focusing? Video quality is so bad. It's like 280p right now. And it's not a focus issue. It drives me nuts. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching on YouTube, I have a dream. And it is to fix my video quality somehow, some way, because this, man, is bad. And it's not an autofocus issue either. Okay, so apologies for low video quality. Me shoving my hand in front of the screen. I was just trying to figure out if it was an autofocus thing with my camera. This is supposed to be a 4K camera, by the way. Drives me nuts. All right, let's open the floor. We can open the mic. Questions about data products. Well, I guess I should have gone to the Q&A tab of my wonderful video platform that makes me look like I'm broadcasting from Jupiter. Data mesh. This is Alan saying the data mesh feels overloaded. It's most certainly is overloaded. Use of MVP product conceptually easy to define, but in practice, clients and stakeholders assign so many more expectations. Well, right, Alan, you're bang on, and the reason is because we all consume products. We go to the grocery store. We buy iPhones. We know good from bad, right? We know good products from bad products. We all, when we buy products and we spend money on things, or if you call something a product, I think it's natural that we all have expectations that, oh, this is going to help solve problems. This is going to be valuable for me. I'm going to want to keep using this. I'm going to understand it. I'm not going to need training on it. Nobody's going to tell me I'm illiterate if I can't figure it out. Sorry. I just, we all need training. We all need user training. We all need to figure out how to get value from our products. I just have a problem with the word. That's all. Literacy. Sorry. I'll let it go. But Alan, point taken. The point is that we all use products. And when you have a data person telling you, oh, hey, I'm going to build some data products. And then you as a consumer, through a dashboard, whatever, through an API, doesn't matter, however you're consuming data, maybe even through an operational system. But if you as a consumer don't see anything change, like at all, and maybe it's actually even harder, because maybe you used to get your dashboards delivered to you in email every week, and now all of a sudden you have to go log in to this other system or to some data catalog to get at it. Maybe it's even harder than it was before to get at the data products, but fundamentally nothing's different. It's the same data. It's the same dashboard. It's the same look and feel, same color of your pie charts. If nothing's really changed, you could say, I think it's reasonable for you to say, what the heck, right? Like, what kind of a product is this? Nothing's easy. My life is not made any easier. I'm not seeing any incremental value. And I think that's often what's happening in a lot of these organizations, is that data teams are saying, we're doing data products. And they're so far focused on the left-hand side of the screen from the last graphic that I showed, that it's all about the plumbing. And they're focused on the plumbing. And they're not focused on the end user. They're not focused on the consumer. And when they focus on the plumbing, hey, that's great. We need better plumbing. We all need better plumbing. But at the same time, if you're out there saying products, and your end consumers, nothing's changed or nothing's different, I think that impacts our credibility. I really do, right? Because when I hear product, I have expectations. To your point, Alan, bang on. And if we're not meeting the expectations, well, that's a problem. So great comment, Alan. Thank you. Shreya, which side of the spectrum would Profisee slide towards for being a superior solution for this? Well, MDM, master data management, is an enabling capability, right? So what we are really, really focused on, and the output of an MDM is what's called master data, right? It is trusted, curated, governed master data objects, a customer record, a supplier record, a asset record. But by definition, right, MDM is curated, governed, discoverable. You know what it is, right? So from a output perspective of MDM, I think it aligns a little bit towards the left-hand side. Now, that doesn't mean that MDM is not product focused and MDM isn't product centric, because I would argue that it actually positively is. The sweet spot, I would argue, where you need to be is using MDM to create trusted, curated, discoverable, accurate, consistent instantiations of those things that matter most: master data, customer, supplier, employee, asset, product. Those are the nouns that matter most in your organization. If you are creating gold master records that are all those things that I mentioned, trusted, consistent, you name it. If you're doing that and you overlay the right-hand side of the screen and you use those master data objects, the master data, as raw materials into dashboards, as raw materials into AI models, as raw materials into vectors or graphs being consumed by chatbots or copilots, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be, where you've got a trusted foundation of data that you know. And by the way, if you've got your master IDs for supplier, customer, you name it, you can use that master ID to go and grab transactional data from anywhere in the organization. You can find all of the metadata that would be associated to those master records across the organization. You can find hierarchies. You can understand the hierarchical relationships that exist between master data objects. So when you combine these things, you could create what would arguably called a master data product that would not just be that object, not just be that record, but would have references to transactional data associated to it, any metadata associated to it, any hierarchies associated to it. You put all that together in a place that is like a marketplace or a catalog, perhaps, where that data is discoverable, it's accessible, it's searchable, where it could be used by AI, dashboards, co-pilots, you name it. That's where I think we really, really need to get to. So it's not an either or. I think you could use MDM to create master data products. I think master data is a natural data product, by the way. Data and Analytics Summit, Gartner, 2 weeks ago, Orlando. My dear friend Helen Grimster gave a presentation. Well, it wasn't her, it was TJ. She gave one last week in Brazil where she said master data is a natural data product. And I couldn't agree more, because it does check all the boxes over in the left-hand side of the screen, but it can be used in the right-hand side of the screen to create solutions that customers get incredible value from, like a 360 view of something, for example. 360 view of customer, of product, of supplier. That's incredibly valuable, and that solves a problem. I don't know a lot of marketing organizations that wouldn't pay for an accurate 360 view of their customers. So it's a bit of both. But MDM, I would argue, is a critical piece of that puzzle. A little bit of an advertisement for MDM, but I believe it. I mean, I was an MDM analyst for 3 years. It's my bread and butter, and I believe it. Great question, Shreya. Thank you. Another question: does data products cater to better democratization and monetization? Monetization, absolutely. Democratization, I think it could. That's part of the argument here is that to democratize data, you build these raw materials that would again be aligned to the left-hand side of the screen. Maybe I'll bring my diagram back up. Well, I don't know how to, we're sharing I won't. Anyway, there are many who believe that to democratize the data, you need to take a mesh type approach. You need to take a data product approach and build these components, build these raw materials, whatever level they're at, because they could be at an API level, they could be at a table level, they could be at a schema level, they could be at an object level, but whatever. You build these containers of things that are governed, that are discoverable, that are reusable, that are scalable, and then you expose those in a data catalog, and then there you go. You democratize that, and people can just go use it however they want to use it. So yeah, I think so. I think absolutely that could support more of a democratization use case. Now, careful, I would argue that just building a data product field of dreams does not guarantee value is going to be delivered. You could build the world's greatest data catalog, fill it with amazing data products that are curated and governed and consistent and trustworthy and are just awesome. My camera is so bad. I'm sorry, folks. This video has got to go. Horrible. And my bandwidth is perfect, by the way. I should do a speed test right now. Sorry. You could build the world's greatest data catalog. And if it's not solving any customer problems and it's not delivering value, well, then why? So that doesn't mean that democratization and monetization are opposed to each other. They're not. But just be careful that it's not just about democratizing. It is about value delivery. And if you monetize something and nobody comes and nobody buys, well, then, then obviously you've got a suboptimal product. People don't like your product. But another thing with monetization, I mean, I think a lot of data teams get wooed. A lot of data leaders kind of get very attracted to the idea of data monetization. I have not seen that work very often at all, unless your business is data, right? Data monetization just looks so attractive and it sounds so attractive. Like for a data leader who is a cost center today and is like, man, I could actually start to become a profit center instead of being a cost center. That sounds great. Let's do it. But if that's not your core business, the operating model required to build and sell things is different than the operating model as a service agency internally, which is what most data teams are today. The operating model of building and selling things is the right-hand side of the screen that I shared before. That it should be, I would argue, folks, our North Star. So I'm not saying to not do it. I'm saying there's work. You got to hire product managers. You got to start thinking differently. You got to think about data value and value engineering and tracking all those things. So that should be our North Star. Just don't get too caught up in the idea of like, oh, okay, well, I can build a data catalog and then I can start monetizing my data. There's a drastically different operating model here that needs to be embraced within data teams. But great question. Thank you. Oh, I want to make sure Sheets had added something very early on, 1137. Where does an MDM domain data asset like product or customer without transactional data sit on your data product spectrum? Well, it's all about how it would be managed. So if it were managed like what I would argue is a real product, it would be over on the right-hand side. But if it was managed as this raw material that I'm just going to go sit in a data catalog and just like assume that people will come and consume it and use it to build other things. Well, there's two different management styles here. And a master data record could fall either place. It could fall over on the left-hand side if that's how you want to manage it, or it could fall on the right-hand side if that's how you manage it. I would recommend that you would want to manage it on the right-hand side, right? Where you would want to use a master data record to make sure that you are delivering exceptional value to solve difficult customer problems, like that 360 use case that I was talking about earlier. So again, think of things a little differently here, folks. Try not to think of a data product based on the attributes of the product itself. Try to think about how it's used, right? Try to think about the value that it's delivering for customers. And it's a subtle difference, right? But we as data people tend to look at things through the lens of attributes, right? But if we can think about things through the lens of problems that are being solved and the value that's being delivered, I would argue that is an equally valid way of looking at things. And we need to look through both lenses, not an either or. But I hope, Sheets, that I had answered the question earlier when I was answering Shreya's question about MDM. Hope so. Alan, curious, do you have a collection of visual anti-patterns and better patterns? I'll leave that. Anti-pattern is not my word. That's Zamok's word or phrase, a conjunction. You know, but it's all centralized patterns. Per the book, Data Mesh by Zamak Dehghani, she calls centralized patterns as anti-patterns. That includes data warehouses, by the way. That includes MDM, because MDM is inherently a centralized way of managing data. It's a data hub, right? So I would argue that full decentralization, probably not feasible or wise. Full centralization, probably not feasible or wise. Something in the middle, right? Where we know that, yeah, hey, let's decentralize where we can, right? One way to look at this would be to think of things as a 3-ring Venn diagram. 3 rings, right? Right in the middle, that's data that's shared everywhere. That's master data. The idea that you completely federate and allow domains to control data that is shared everywhere, well, not feasible. That's chaos. That's total chaos. Allow marketing to define what a customer is versus and say, well, marketing is going to define it this way, without having some sort of overlay on the top to say, aha, here's how we define a customer. Because if your CEO asks how many customers do we have, there's only one answer. Now, the answer may be different to the marketer, and that's okay. You can have 2 things be true at the same time, but having complete decentralization of how you define customers, not going to work. Nor is complete centralization of how you define customers, because the marketing team is going to push back and say, that doesn't work for us. That doesn't work for us. So it's not an either or, it's a both. Oh, thank you, Libby. Mark from LinkedIn. There's a product value through the lens of save money, make money, reduce risk. Yes, absolutely. I agree. Save money, relatively easy, quantifiable. Agreed with that. The reduced risk driver of value can really tip the scales if you can tell an effective story around it. Exactly. This is why banking, is leading the front in a lot of different use cases, particularly MDM. Banking companies have been using MDM forever and ever. As other companies were unable to articulate the value of MDM, banks were able to say, yeah, we need it because we're reducing our compliance and fraud risk and all sorts of other risks. So yes, absolutely. So it's not just top line, it is bottom line. All being equal, Mark, I would argue if you're trying to make a case for MDM or data quality or data management writ large, if you're trying to make a business case, I would focus on the top line though. It's more compelling, it's sexier. Companies really kind of care more about the top line than they do about the bottom line, generally. And when you're looking just at the bottom line, like efficiency, a lot of companies will just typically say, we can just throw more bodies at it. But it's a really good point. Yes, there are costs here that you can reduce costs or reduce risk. And those are equally as valid measures when it comes to looking at the value of data. Shreya, how does Profisee approach the integration of business customers? Yeah, same. B2B, B2C, it's just a customer. I think maybe we could have a conversation about how you model that, some sort of party-based model where it's a party customer versus party person versus party business. But that easily, yes, we do either. We do both. Dan from LinkedIn, you touched on this earlier. Would you say that it's easier to teach a software product manager data than a data resource product management? Yes, absolutely, positively. Product people can be easily tuned to support iPhones or insulated mugs or shirts, right? Because the discipline of product management is the tie that binds. And you can teach them data. You can absolutely positively teach them data, but it's also a bit of a different mindset. I would argue it is a bit more creative. It's certainly problem solving is at the core of product management. But yeah, absolutely. You can teach data to a product manager far easier than you could teach product management to a data person. Now, it doesn't mean that you couldn't do either. Of course you can. But I would start with a product manager, and because also product managers are all about understanding business processes, by the way. That's what they do. So great question, Dan. Thank you. We are winding down, folks. I hope you got value from my discussion about data products. Again, there is no wrong answer here. I have a favorite. I think I know where I would lean and where I would recommend folks lean is over on the right-hand side. Integration of product management into data and analytics functions, where you put the customer at the center and you put customer value at the center. I think that's the greatest value for our organizations. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, that's fine too. I think that's okay. And I think you probably end up doing both. And again, no wrong answer, but hopefully that cuts through some of the hype related to data products. Happy Friday, everybody. For those of you consuming this on YouTube after the fact, I apologize for the low video quality. We'll get it figured out. I do this once a month, the last Friday of every month. Please plan on joining me 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the US. You can catch up after the fact on YouTube. We do post this on LinkedIn as well. So if you do have follow-up questions that I didn't answer today, please hit me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, look for more great content, subscribe to the CDO Matters podcast. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in another month. Have a great day.